question, the way you would answer is N/A, not applicable, or it doesn't apply to me because I am a man and I don't have a period. The question who created God is based on a wrong conception about God. We're not talking about something that could be created. We're not talking about that. It is based on a false premise. So when somebody asks that question, you don't have the conception of God that I'm talking about. The God I'm talking about is not what you're thinking. You're still stuck on the earth where things are created, things have origins. God transcends the earth and everything that you can imagine, and everything, all the billions of stars and 14 billion light years, this universe that's inconceivable how large it is. He transcends all of that. And so those kind of questions don't apply to him. One of the most famous verses in the Qur'an is Ayatul Kursi, which talks about the dominion of Allah. So it's Surah Al-Baqarah, this is chapter 2, verse 255. And this is, whenever you see a poster, you will find this verse, almost all, the most popular poster of verse of the Quran is Ayatul Kursi. And as children, we memorize it also. Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyu al-qayyum, la ta'khudhuhu sinatun wa la nawm, lahu ma fi as-samawati wa ma fi al-ard, man dhal ladhi yashfa'u 'indahu illa bi'idhnihi, يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء وسع كرسيه السماوات والأرض ولا يؤوده حفظهما وهو العلي العظيم. Allah, there is no deity save Him, the ever-living, the self-subsistent fount of all being. Tough English. Neither slumber overtakes Him nor sleep. He is all that's in the heavens. His is all that's in the heavens and all that's on earth. Who is there that could intercede with Him, unless it be by His leave, by His permission? He knows all that lies open before men, before human beings, and all that's hidden from them, whereas they cannot attain to nothing of His knowledge, save which He wills unto them to attain. His eternal power overspreads the heavens and the earth, and their upholding wearies Him not. And He alone is truly exalted, tremendous. English translation. I struggle with the English translation. So, what the verse conveys is that Allah is the only one. He is the only one. He is ever living, Al-Hayy Al-Qayyum, and He sustains everything. He is the sustainer of everything. He is the boss of everything. He is the owner of everything. No slumber can overtake Him, nor sleep. He owns everything, the dominions of the heaven and the earth. Everything is His. And nothing can intercede with Him. In other words, there's nobody who has the right to intercede on His behalf. In other words, there's nobody who's equal to Him who can say, please don't do this or don't do that. Those who He allows to do that are beings that He allows to do that, like the Prophet ﷺ. And He knows everything and He sees everything. Nothing is hidden from Him. Again, these are verses that I selected from the Quran, the basic ones, but there are all others. Just as I was reading now, I remember another verse. هو الأول والآخر والظاهر والباطن. It's another verse. هو الأول والآخر والظاهر والباطن. And it tells you He's the first, He's the last, He's hidden and He's apparent. Go figure. And again, these are all, a lot of things are allegorical. So we don't have to be literal. Another very popular verse that gives you an understanding of Allah is in Surah An-Nur. And this verse is called Ayatul Nur. Nur meaning light. And Allah uses the concept of light to, to refer to some of his attributes. الله نور السماوات والأرض مثل نوره كمشكاة فيها مصباح المصباح في زجاجة الزجاجة كأنها كوكب دري يوقد من شجرة مباركة زيتونة لا شرقية ولا غربية يكاد زيتها يضيء ولو لم يمسسه نار نور على نور يهدي الله لنوره من يشاء ويضرب الله الأمثال للناس والله بكل شيء عليم. The English translation runs like this. This translation is based, these translations that are based on Muhammad Asad's translation. It's one of the, if you have a chance to buy that book, and it's now, it used to be very expensive, but it's cheaper now online. It's called The Message of the Qur'an. I think it's considered, to me, it's one of the best translations in English. It's not usually available in these in masjids, but I would strongly recommend it. It was written by Muhammad Asad, who was an Austrian Jew who became Muslim in the 1920s. He was a reporter at the time, and he traveled throughout the. Can you guys keep it? He was a reporter for an Austrian newspaper. And he traveled throughout the Muslim world, Egypt and Arabia, all the way to Afghanistan. And he describes his travels. If he had not become Muslim, he would have been more famous than Lawrence of Arabia, because the kind of things that he did, it's just amazing. But unfortunately for him, but fortunately for us, he became Muslim. At the time, he was atheist, and so when he oh, by the way, his story, he retells this story that I'm telling you, parts of it, in a book he wrote called The Road to Mecca. And it's about his travels and how he became Muslim, how he finally became Muslim. Excuse me, Rabia, can you please be quiet?
Okay,
the book is called The Road to Mecca, and he narrates a story of in Afghanistan. They invited, Afghani people are very hospitable people, and they invited him to tea everywhere. In Central Asia, tea is big. Everybody invites you to tea, and so one time he said he was drinking tea when when this Afghani, and he was talking to him, he knew about what was going on in the Muslim world and how the Europeans divided up the Muslim world and the colonial system that they imposed on it. So he had the innate fairness of somebody who knew what Europe was doing wrong. So he would talk about those kind of things. And this Afghani guy looked at him and he said, you're a Muslim, but you don't know it. He said that to him. When he went back to Austria, he was an atheist. He really didn't believe that there was revealed knowledge and nothing of that kind. And when he went back to Austria, one of the things that he noticed at the time was that people seemed to be doing well in terms of material things, but they seem to be sad at the same time. They don't seem to be happy. And so he was writing it down when he pointed that out to his wife, and his wife agreed with him. And he went back home, and at the time, as a journalist, he was writing some kind of article where he needed to quote the Qur'an. So he had the Qur'an open, and he was trying to put it back into the bookcase, where it opened to Surah Al-Takathur. أَلْهَاكُمُ التَّكَاثُرُ حَتَّى زُرْتُمُ الْمَقَابِرَ كَلَّا سَوْفَ تَعْلَمُونَ ثُمَّ كَلَّا سَوْفَ تَعْلَمُونَ كَلَّا لَوْ تَعْلَمُونَ عِلْمَ الْيَقِينِ لَتَرَوُنَّ الْجَحِيمَ ثُمَّ لَتَرَوُنَّهَا عَيْنَ الْيَقِينِ ثُمَّ لَتُسْأَلُنَّ يَوْمَئِذٍ عَنِ النَّعِيمِ. Believe it or not, that surah convinced him that the Quran was the truth. Because he realized that this surah actually explains what he noticed in the face of the people, that they lived a life of unhappiness, a life of like a life of hellfire, that they were like in hell because of their want for more and more material things. And the Quran says, if in that state of wanting more and more material freedom, nothing will satisfy you. You will always be unhappy. And before you go to hell in the fire, in the hereafter, you're going to experience it in here. So that he becomes Muslim, and he was so committed. He moved to Arabia to study the Quran in Arabic, studied the Quran in Arabic, became a muhaddith. I mean, he has an amazing story. And so he finally wrote a translation. But you can understand his English is not even his third language. It may be his fourth language. But he translated it into English. It's called The Message of the Quran. With one caveat, he was influenced a lot by the rationalist school of thought. There were three people at the time who were great in that kind of thinking. It was started with Jamaluddin al-Afghani, who was from Afghanistan, traveled throughout the Muslim world into Europe, and he influenced a scholar by the name of Muhammad Abdo, who was Egyptian. Muhammad Abdo was Egyptian, and then Muhammad Abdo influenced Rashid Rida, who also did know. Rashid Rida he ended up being in Egypt, but he was from Syria originally, I think. He was originally from Syria, but he ended up in Egypt, and. No, actually, Muhammad Abdo is also from Syria.
No, Muhammad Abdo is Egyptian.
He's Egyptian. He ended up in Egypt and heading the Al-Azhar, but he may have originally been from Syria. But anyway, these borders mean nothing anyway. The whole area is Arabic-speaking and Muslim. So he was influenced greatly by these scholars who had to deal with the European influence from the Islamic perspective. And so they had their own thoughts on how to counter the European imperialist influence. That was a digression. That was not intended as part of this. But if you're interested, he wrote a lot of books. Eventually, he ended up living in Gibraltar, and amazing adventures. He became muhaddith, meaning that he specialized. He didn't specialize in the Quran, though he did translate the Quran. He specialized in the hadith, or the traditions of the Prophet. So these are the translation are most. I change few things that I feel like he's kind of off, but other than that, it's the basic translation is his.
So Muhammad Abdo was Egyptian, and Muhammad Rashid Rida was born in Lebanon.
In Lebanon?
Mm-hmm. But he ended up in Egypt.
Lebanon, okay.
Yeah, somewhere in Lebanon.
Tarapolis?
Very near to Syria.
Tarapolis?
I think check.
Okay. Okay. God, this is the translation of the verse called An-Nur, light. So it's an allegorical description of God through light. God is the light of the heavens and the earth. The parable of his light is, so it says God is the light of the heavens and the earth. He's the light of the heavens and the earth. Of course, we should never think of it literally. So, he is the light of the heavens and the earth. It's not that God has likened himself to light, because he created light. So, the parable of his light is, as if it were, that of a niche containing a lamp. The lamp is enclosed in glass, the glass shining like a radiant star. The lamp lit from a blessed tree, an olive tree that's neither of the east nor of the west. The oil thereof is so bright that it would well nigh give light of itself, even though fire had not touched it. Light upon light. God guides unto his light him that he wills to be guided, or him that wills to be guided. And to this end God propounds, or Allah propounds, parables unto humankind, since Allah alone has full knowledge of all things. That's the English translation. Now, we're going to go through a number of attributes. And again, Allah's attributes are throughout the Qur'an. And in this passage, the coming passage, it tells you of Asma'ullah al-Husna, the beautiful names or attributes of Allah, which according to Hadith is 99. 99 are not really, Allah's attributes are inexhaustible, but 99 would give you a general idea of what Allah is, or his attributes. Surah Al-Hajj, it's chapter 59, verses 21 to 24. I started with 21 because this verse, it's not really related to what we're talking about, but it's related to the Qur'an. And if I had remembered the first time we started this study together, I would have quoted this verse. That's why I included verse number 21. لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله وتلك الأمثال نضربها للناس لعلهم يتفكرون. لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله وتلك الأمثال نضربها للناس لعلهم يتفكرون. Had we bestowed this Quran from on high upon a mountain, you would indeed have seen it humbling itself, breaking asunder in awe of God, of Allah. He uses God, and I'm trying to change it every time. In place of Allah, he uses God. And all such parables we propound unto humankind so that they might think. By the way, Muhammad Assad's translation is big on thinking. The subtitle to his book, The Message of the Quran, is for people who think, because it's a لِقَوْمٍ يَعْقِلُونَ. It's a phrase that's repeated in the Quran. لِقَوْمٍ يَعْقِلُونَ. So he decided to do that, to put that as a subtitle to his translation, the message of the Quran, لِقَوْمٍ يَعْقِلُونَ, for people who think. So it says that Allah gives these kind of examples so that people would think. So this last few verses of Surah Hashr, chapter 59, it goes on to give a number of attributes of Allah. The most important one, the most basic ones. Allah, let's say it in Arabic, and this is also a very popular passage. A lot of people recite it in prayer when we pray. هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو عالم هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو عالم الغيب والشهادة هو الرحمن الرحيم هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الملك القدوس السلام